Of October 7th, Hamas brutalized, bound, burned, murdered, beheaded, and sexually assaulted young girls and women in Israel. As a feminist and activist, I have stood shoulder to shoulder with women my entire adult life. But then, on October 7th, I suddenly found myself completely alone. The champions I had stood next to so many times through so many injustices just disappeared. Peers, friends, universities, and fellow leaders who still remain silent. You have made the deliberate choice to look the other way. UN Women, it took you 50 days to condemn this gender-based violence and another 7 to utter a single word about the terrorists that perpetrated them. When we commit to speaking out for women and girls, that means all women and girls.
That was activist Mandana Dayani speaking yesterday at the United Nations. Her remarks come as the UN's women's rights body has been criticized by many, including 80 House lawmakers, for not condemning the terrorist group's violent abuse of Israeli women fast enough, only doing so 8 weeks after the attack. And Mandana joins us now. She's also co-founder of the nonprofit organization I Am a Voter. Mandana, thank you for everything that you said and everything that you're doing. You spoke yesterday along with former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, Meta Sheryl Sandberg, and many others. And you were very personal and powerful with your remarks. What was the message you were hoping to send to members?
Thank you for having me. And, you know, it's been really, really heartbreaking watching people that I admire and respect just not show up for these women and girls. We know what happened to them. We have enough videos. We have enough testimony. The terrorists admitted to it. They filmed it on their GoPros and live streamed it on our feeds. These women deserve the dignity of, and they deserve to be believed. You know, if we are feminists, if we've in any way evolved as human beings, we've learned to believe women, and that really does mean all women. And to have their stories not supported by women's organizations, feminist universities, people I really admire and respect, is deeply heartbreaking. And they need to show up. These women have done, you know, many of them didn't survive. The brutality against them was beyond anything that any of us could have imagined. And part of my call to action that day was, well, it's very clear that you haven't showed up for many reasons, and I, you know, talked through some of them, but now is the time to prove that you care. Now is the time to speak up. Now is the time to use your voice. And, you know, I shared a little bit about my childhood, really just to draw the parallel of feeling silenced. And we aren't anymore, right? This isn't, right. We all have the privilege of being able to speak out and condemn this violence.
Mandana, why do you think the delay, why do you think it happened for so many to unequivocally, you know, just speak out against what Hamas did to Israeli women? And what do you want the UN, major women's organizations, foreign governments, the U.S. government to do?
I think that there are many people who don't like Jews. I think anti-Semitism plays a big part in this. I think there are people that are afraid to condemn any action that happened against Israelis and Jewish women because they're afraid of siding with Israel, and they have deep anti-Zionist beliefs, which are completely unacceptable, particularly in a conflict like this. There are no two sides to what happened to these women and girls, and that there's no conversation. What happened to them was horrible. We know that it happened, and it must be condemned. My goal in speaking up, my goal in being here now, is that we are not here to deny their experience. We are not here to politicize their experience. We cannot act like they are undeserving of our support, and we cannot be complicit in emboldening the perpetrators. We have to condemn these war crimes. We have to condemn gender-based violence when we see it, and we've seen it. And truly, that is what I'm asking. It is time that everyone stands up and does the right thing.
Seems like such an obvious request, but it's one that so many people, as you say, have fallen down on it and not stepped up to. We were talking a minute ago about this idea that most people share, I think, which is the Palestinian people, the civilians there, deserve dignity. They deserve a good life. You can disagree with the way Israel is prosecuting the war, too many civilian casualties, all the things we talk about every morning. But this is something else. This is a very specific thing that we know happened because, as you say, we have video evidence, we have testimony from survivors that happened to groups of women. And so it's beyond most of us to understand what you just explained, which is that people are willing to somehow say, okay, it happened, but, or to ignore the fact that it happened at all. Have you spoken to some of the people, your friends, colleagues, people you've worked with on other issues behind the scenes? And express your disappointment, but also hear them explain why they don't feel maybe publicly comfortable condemning what's so easy to condemn?
Yeah, I picked up the phone. I've called a lot of people. I've had this conversation many times. And again, I look at what happened on October 7th and what happened after October 7th. What happened on October 7th cannot be in any way conflated with these other stories. What happened that day was unacceptable. It was unprovoked. Israel did not ask for this war. These people were home asleep in their pajamas with their children, or they were at a peace festival dancing with their friends. There's nothing, anything you say beyond that is acting like there is a reason or an excuse for something like that to happen. And there isn't. There is nothing on earth that will justify that behavior. And what happened is unacceptable, and it must be condemned. Hamas is a terrorist group. What happened after Israel's response is a completely different conversation. We can have all the conversations you want about the geopolitical conflict in the Middle East and what you think about land disputes and who's indigenous. Happy to have that conversation. We may all have very similar or different beliefs. None of that has anything to do with what Israelis suffered that day. And it's completely unacceptable that those messages are being mixed right now, because they cannot be.
And there's no question that what happened on October 7th, Rev, should be separate from what has come since then. But so many Democrats, including some pretty prominent Democrats, lawmakers, have had real trouble saying exactly that. They've had real trouble talking about what happened and not mixing it up with the geopolitics of the situation. And we're seeing it, in polls suggest, really dividing the Democratic Party right now, and not just trouble for President Biden's reelection bid, but for the party right now.
It is, to me, disgraceful, because if you cannot take a moral position on people, civilians being killed, women being raped, then how do you take a position later on other issues? On October 7th, when I reached out and said this was wrong, people that I've worked with in civil rights, the month before with the March on Washington, were saying, that's touchy. Touchy about what? How do you stand up for anything if you don't stand up for everything? And I respect what you've done. One of the things that I talked yesterday, Martin Luther King III and Andrea Waters King and I had a Zoom call with the mother and father of one of the hostages. And what I didn't know, and I feel bad I didn't know, is that Hamas is not only holding Israelis and Jews. They have two people from Tanzania, one from South Africa. They're holding blacks. And nobody, not that that should be the reason we get in this, but they do not care about women, blacks, anybody else, yet everybody seems to be rallying around that. And tell us how isolated that makes you feel, that people that you've marched with and have in many ways championed the cause of feminism that are now, for whatever reasons, backing up. They're champions of Me Too here, but there are too few there.
Thank you for saying that. You know, look, I never did those things for some quid pro quo because I wanted people to have my back. I did those things because they were the right thing to do. I quit my job and spent years advocating to have the reunification of families at the border because it was the right thing to do. When we saw what happened, I was just in Israel. I went to one of the kibbutz. I saw the destruction, hours and hours, each family bound together, burned alive, set on fire, bullet holes. I mean, the pain was the point. And these people are acting like they're trying to see the best in Hamas. Like, it defies any form of logic. It is a terrorist organization. They killed so many Arab Israelis that are Muslim. They took so many people that came from every single corner of this world. They don't care. And by the way, they go on television every single chance they have and keep repeating that they're going to do this again and again and again. And they're not going to stop with the Jews. Obviously, they want the eradication of Israel and Jews. And then they come for the West. And again, to see leaders that are not recognize how dangerous this is. Again, I lived in Iran. I know how dangerous these people are, and it really is disturbing that they're supporting this. And I'm seeing this. This is the kibbutz Be'eri. This is Faraz, the other kibbutz that I went to.
Yeah.
And the destruction was the worst. I mean, listening to these people, and so many of these people were there to work on peace. And it was the worst thing I've ever seen. Truly, it was so destructive.
You have been working 24/7 to try and shine a light on not just your message, but on the entire situation, and to promote understanding, a real understanding of the complexity of this. While in Israel, you spoke with a mother whose 21-year-old son was taken hostage when he was attending the music festival in southern Israel. Here's a bit of that conversation. I want to show it.
My son went to the party, a festival for peace and love. And on Saturday morning, at the 7th of October, he called me and 7:45 in the morning. And he said to me, "Mom, they closed the party. There are bumps and they're shooting all over. I'm hiding. I'll be in contact with you every half an hour." And since then, I don't have any contact with him. Nothing. On that day, we published his picture on the Facebook. And after 3 or 4 hours, someone recognized him from a video clip that the Hamas published. He was lying on the floor with 4 other guys. I felt this moment. I understand that my life are going to change. It won't be the same. You can't eat, you can't sleep all the time thinking about him. And I have to fight for him. I have to fight to bring him back.
Mandana Dayani, I want to just thank you for all of your work and your continued work in the days and weeks to come. So come back soon and keep us posted. Thank you for coming on this morning.